Hello and welcome everyone. We are excited to have a great discussion today about wrangling the Farm Bill with an incredible panel. We hope that this will be a panel that you participate in. We would love to get your questions. So as you get joined into the session, if you have questions that come up for you, please click on that Q&A tab and add your questions there so our moderator can be able to see any comments, questions coming your way. Now I'm going to kick it off to our incredible panel and our moderator, Eric Mitchell.
Thank you so much and welcome again. And thank you again for joining us for this great panel entitled Wrangling the Farm Bill. We have a great series of experts with us today who are really going to talk to us about what is this Farm Bill, why is it so important to addressing food security here in the United States, and what are the political implications if we do not pass a farm bill that actually will put us on the path to ending hunger in the United States. Joining me today is Monica Gonzalez, Director of Congressional Relations at Feeding America. We also have Alex Berger, who's the Manager of Government Affairs at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, and Aaron Shire, Government Relations Director at the National Farmers Union. This panel here will talk to us about what the current status of the Farm Bill is and what is at stake with this very important legislation. So I'll start with my first question to the entire group. What is the Farm Bill and why is it so important to addressing hunger? Alex, I'll start with you.
Well, thanks so much, Eric, and excuse me, appreciate you all having me here today. It's great to be on this panel and share this virtual stage with so many great advocates and really to participate in this really great and important conference. I want to start by taking a step back a little bit and explain a little bit more about what the Farm Bill is and the process for how a Farm Bill is formed. And then I wanted to jump into sort of the political morass of where we currently find ourselves and how we hope to eventually get out of it or manage it at least. Primarily the Center and many other anti-poverty, anti-hunger groups that are participating here today are focusing their Farm Bill work around the nutrition title, which was added to the Farm Bill in the 1970s. The nutrition title, among other things, of course, sets the policies for the SNAP program, our nation's most important anti-hunger program. Historically, the process of drafting and enacting a Farm Bill is a long one. It includes multiple field hearings across the country where members of the House and Senate Ag Committees barnstorm across the country, meeting with producers, suppliers, community groups, and a variety of different constituencies to better understand the needs that need to be addressed in this bill. And that's in addition to the numerous Capitol Hill hearings where industry groups, advocacy groups, and community members testify in front of the various ag committees. Historically, the Farm Bill is constructed under a bipartisan basis, and it often takes at least a year, not far more than a year, from the initial field hearings to the final passage of a bill. This cycle in creating the Farm Bill has in many ways replicated what has been done in the past, but has also diverged in some key ways that have shaped the conversation. As in previous cycles, hearings both on the Hill and in the field began more than a year ago and as far back as the previous session of Congress. As well, of course, industry groups and advocates alike have engaged very closely with members of both parties to help shape the contours of this bill. However, we've seen some really significant departures from the norm as well that have shaped the conversation and where we're at the moment. Foremost, as the process was really beginning in earnest around this Farm Bill and was really heating up, we found ourselves in a standoff around the debt ceiling and the debt limit. As a result of that standoff, President Biden and Speaker McCarthy agreed to a budget deal wherein House Republicans would agree to increase the debt limit, increase the debt ceiling, and avert a financial disaster in exchange for cuts in appropriated spending and an expansion of work requirements to older adults in the SNAP program. That same legislation did provide an exemption from the current work requirements for veterans, youth who are aging out of the foster care system, and people experiencing homelessness, although both of those changes are temporary. In many ways, expanding work requirements for SNAP was the number one priority for Republicans in the Farm Bill, especially in the House. So this development really did reshape the debate by taking some of the air out of the GOP attacks on the Farm Bill around work requirements, though we could certainly still and probably still very much will see continued effort from Republicans to expand work requirements as part of the Farm Bill. As well, House Democrats, I should say, formed a special separate task force outside of the Agricultural Committee to hone their overall Farm Bill priorities, to better equip their caucus and their members to elevate the issues that are important in the Farm Bill. Another unique factor that has shaped this debate was the administration's implementation of a provision within the 2018 Farm Bill to perform the first update in several decades to the Thrifty Food Plan, which serves as the basis for determining SNAP benefit amounts. Even though the 2018 Farm Bill was the vehicle that carried this provision, that bill was a bipartisan bill signed by President Trump. Even all those things notwithstanding, congressional Republicans have been furious about this update, the process surrounding it, and have made handcuffing future updates their top legislative priority in the Farm Bill, especially on the Senate side of things. So where does all this leave us at the moment? So although a lot of work has been done, a lot of paper has been passed between leadership in both chambers, and there's lots still underway to craft a bill, at this moment, progress remains rather elusive. It is clear that so far, Senate leaders have been unable to reach a bipartisan agreement, in part because Ranking Member Bozeman of the Agricultural Committee is intent on restricting future updates to the Thrifty Food Plan, as was required as part of the 2018 Farm Bill. And Ag Committee Chair Stabenow is unwilling to give any ground on that critically important issue. And remember, at least 60 votes are needed in the Senate to overcome a filibuster, so both Democratic and Republican votes are needed to pass the Farm Bill. Over on the House side of things, even though a simple majority can pass a bill in that chamber, many Republicans will be unwilling to support nearly any farm bill that comes up for a vote, as that group tends to oppose all agricultural subsidies. So a bipartisan agreement is also going to be needed on the House side of things. And yet, finding agreement has been a struggle over in the House. And as many folks have been seeing in the news and playing out over the past few months, the House has been jumping from crisis to crisis between the speaker's fight and shutdown threats. And so really, there has not been the air or the agreement to move forward on anything in that sense. So all of this leaves us in a place where the most likely scenario at the moment is that we see an extension of the current Farm Bill, likely a year in length, to allow them the opportunity to find a Farm Bill that can pass both chambers and make it back to the president's desk.
Thanks, Alex, for giving us that historical context of what the Farm Bill is, but also talking about where we are now on the legislative and political side of things. Monica, I'll turn it over to you. What is the Farm Bill to Feeding America, and why is it so important to addressing hunger?
Thank you, Eric, for having me here today. And I'm really excited to be here with all of my esteemed colleagues in this space. All of us are working on so many different fronts to move a really good farm bill. And I really appreciated everything Alex had to say in terms of kind of where we are in the political landscape of a farm bill going forward. I want to share my screen for a minute just to kind of bring home the urgency of why we need to move a farm bill. The farm bill presents our best opportunity to really think about the programs that are working to address hunger, to help farmers, to help families. And so I think all of us last week were really kind of poring over the numbers from USDA about kind of where we stand today in terms of how families are being able to put food on the table. So let me share my screen for a minute just to give you a sense of where we are in terms of addressing hunger. I think what we saw is that, through the pandemic, when we invested in all of the nutrition programs and we really invested in all of those other wraparound services such as the child tax credit, rental assistance, all of those things, we were able to see an improvement in food insecurity. But what came out last week was really disappointing because all of the strides that we had made in addressing hunger eroded. They were absolutely erased when we think about the jump and the leap of families who are experiencing food insecurity. So when we talk about what is the urgency, what is the opportunity with respect to the Farm Bill, this is it. This is us really trying to say, we need to do more. We need to invest in these programs to really make sure that we are addressing hunger in the United States. Let me also flip to another slide here just to give everyone an overview of the programs that we're really talking about when we talk about the Farm Bill. And while myself and others are very invested in the nutrition title, I think it's really important to see all of the programs that fall under the Farm Bill. And I think, to the extent that we talk about the nutrition title in terms of wanting to make sure that we are, ensuring that we're protecting those programs, strengthening those programs. It's important to recognize that there's so many stakeholders invested in the entire Farm Bill, and that includes the nutrition title, retailers, farmers, etc. But I also want to focus a little bit on what Alex raised, and that is also the Thrifty Food Plan. The Thrifty Food Plan was really an opportunity to have it keep pace. The adjustment in the Thrifty Food Plan was allowed us to keep pace with what we're seeing today in terms of kind of the food prices, the way people shop today, how families look today. And so we wanted to make sure that these programs keep pace. And the way we do that is really through the Farm Bill. So when we talk about the urgency to make sure that we move a Farm Bill forward, and I think to Alex's point, like we're not looking just to move a Farm Bill for the sake of moving a Farm Bill. We're looking to move a good Farm Bill, a Farm Bill that's going to strengthen these programs, protect these programs we know have a proven track record of working. We saw it through the pandemic, and that will actually address hunger, that will help farmers, that helps families, and that ensures that our food system is very stable. And we saw the importance of that during the pandemic. So again, I think to the point about how we want to make sure that we advance a Farm Bill, I think all of you in this summit are critical to that, because we know that members of Congress listen to their constituents. When they go home, you have the opportunity to help hold them accountable to making sure that we move a Farm Bill across the finish line that is going to help families and farmers. And so it's really up to all of you. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation. So thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Monica. And Aaron, I'll turn it over to you to kind of give from the farmer and ag producer's perspective of why this Farm Bill is so important and what will it do to address hunger.
Yeah, thank you so much, Eric, and thank you to you and to the Alliance to End Hunger for inviting me to join this conversation. And I really am glad to be on this panel with Monica and Alex, and Feeding America and the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities are just such key organizations in this conversation. First, though, because this is a hunger summit, and I feel like some of you may not know National Farmers Union as well, I just wanted to share a little bit about who we are as an organization. We're a grassroots organization. We were founded in 1902, and we represent more than 220,000 family farmers and ranchers across the country. We're a general farm organization, and by general, that means we represent farmers of all shapes and sizes and types, so not any particular commodities. So we have cow-calf operators and folks who raise corn and soybeans and the major commodities, and fruit and vegetable growers, and those who are selling into commodity markets, and those who are selling direct to market, say at a farmer's market. So all shapes and sizes and all across the country. And then a little bit more about NFU's perspective on the Farm Bill and this question of hunger. We know, and our members know, there is a political imperative for anti-hunger advocates and farmers to work hand in hand to pass a Farm Bill. That's certainly part of the equation. To get the votes to pass a Farm Bill and make that work, that's important. But as Farmers Union and as our members tell us, we need to go a step further. We as an organization are a proud member of the Alliance to End Hunger, and our grassroots policy, our members' policy, is very clear that we believe all Americans, regardless of their means, should be able to afford a reliable, healthy and safe and nutritious diet. And that means that when we work on a Farm Bill, we need to be passing and establishing programs that create a robust, reliable farm safety net, but we also need really robust nutrition programs, and we need to work together to find a path to make sure all of those programs are going to work well. To dive a little bit more into that question of why the Farm Bill is important for addressing hunger, this may sound a little simple, and perhaps it's even too obvious to say, but we don't have food security without farmers. What isn't simple, though, is making sure farmers have all the tools they need to keep farming. Farming is a business. It is a challenging business. It's a very capital intensive business. It takes a lot of capital to run a modern farm. Land prices are high, equipment is very expensive, and so on. The marketplace is not in the control of farmers. So commodity price swings and all of those things, that's not something farmers can control. And of course, farmers, though they may prefer to or wish they could, can't control the weather and are subject to weather disasters, extreme weather events, and so much that's outside of their control, which is true for so many of us in different ways. It's certainly true for the way farmers run their businesses. And Alex touched a little bit on sort of the history of the Farm Bill, but I just wanted to share that the Farm Bill has a really long history. It's evolved significantly since we've arguably passed the first Farm Bill back in 1933. You know, at that time, part of the New Deal, the real focus was on really low prices for farmers and high consumer prices for eaters. And also the Dust Bowl was ravaging the country at that time, and soil conservation and erosion was a big question. And we passed a Farm Bill that largely had to do with those things. But fast forward to now, and the Farm Bill covers, as I think Monica pointed out really well, a wide variety of topics, maybe even more than were represented on that slide about four, you know, that obscures the many, in some ways, many pages you have in a Farm Bill, and topics ranging from research to trade to rural development to credit, and of course, nutrition. And there's just so much in the Farm Bill, and as Alex said, so many different stakeholders. So to sum things up, the Farm Bill is absolutely an essential legislative vehicle for farmers and for eaters. And you know, since it is passed every 5 years, give or take, but generally is putting policy in place for a longer term, it's so important to get it as right as we can, because it's setting forth the policies we'll be living under and dealing with for quite a number of years ahead. So with that, I'll turn it back over, and I really appreciate, again, the opportunity to be here and share NFU's perspective and engage in this conversation.
Thank you, Aaron. And I want to piggyback a little bit on what Monica mentioned in her comments, just regarding a good farm bill and some of the things that they would like to see coming out the door of what a good farm bill should accomplish. Can you guys maybe expand on that a little bit? What is an ideal farm bill? Like, how can we get a farm bill that actually puts us on the path to ending hunger in the U.S.?
Say that good farm bill is equitable, it's just, it removes barriers for people to access the programs, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a participant in the nutrition program. It strengthens the programs, all the programs, not just the nutrition programs, but all the programs, so they can work effectively, and to make sure that our food system is secured in a way that, you know, we can trust it and rely on it, because we know that, you know, food security is national security. And so we need to make sure that we have a farm bill that really embodies all of those principles of making sure that it's equitable, that it's just, that it's accessible, that ensures that, you know, the mission of the Farm Bill in its overall, you know, from when it was established, continues throughout. And I think that the idea that we want to, you know, be punitive in the way that we address the Farm Bill, whether it's adding more administrative hurdles on top of already administrative policies such as work requirements. Work requirements have already existed. And so we're only layering more administrative requirements on top of administrative requirements that in the end puts more burdens on state agencies at a time they're unable to really implement and really take on more burdens. And in the end, all we do is impede access to people who need food assistance the most. So we should really look at how we invest in the programs that, lift people up and puts them into jobs that they can actually continue to grow and eventually move up the economic ladder. That's where our attention and our focus should be. And when it comes to wanting to put handcuffs or to cap the Thrifty Food Plan, we need these programs to be nimble so that they can respond to current environments and situations, just like we saw with the pandemic. We saw where there was lots of opportunities to really have innovations and to create flexibilities that allowed us to be more nimble and respond in a way that it averted a national hunger crisis. So those are some of the things that I think are critically important in a farm bill.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think all of that is 100% right. In terms of just digging into some of the more concrete policies that we've been pushing for on the Hill, and certainly would appreciate the help of all you listening in and watching to continue to push this up. But and maybe it's the former speechwriter in me, but I've gotten our team over here down to the 3 A's. That's what we like to talk about: adequacy, access, and accountability. Adequacy in terms of benefit adequacy is really about, as Monica was just mentioning, protecting the Thrifty Food Plan updates, which as part of the 2018 Farm Bill are supposed to be happening every 5 years, and to ensure that those updates are taking place on those established timelines and with the independence, the scientific independence to follow the data and to follow the research wherever it leads, without needing overly burdensome and overdue congressional oversight, which is what a lot of folks on the Republican side of things are calling for. And then in terms of access, obviously we want to increase access to those who need it to the SNAP program. And there are so many who are unable to access it entirely, who are only able to access it for brief periods of time. Of course, in terms of access, we really want to see the elimination of the incredibly harsh and punitive 3-month time limit that currently exists among SNAP participation. Folks who are within a certain subgroup are only able to access 3 months of SNAP benefits out of a 3-year period. And that's obviously incredibly difficult for those who are in need of critical food assistance programs. Ending the drug felon ban on SNAP participation. This is an incredibly punitive, very racially toned and targeted relic of the failed drug war, and really has the implications to push a lot of folks, and a lot of Black and brown communities in particular, SNAP participation. In many states, they've gotten rid of it, or they've watered down the ban, but getting rid of it entirely, I think, is a critical step we need to take in order to do all the things that Monica was talking about in terms of equity and in terms of access. Focusing on food assistance in Puerto Rico and the other U.S. territories. As of now, those territories and Puerto Rico, they get a block grant each year, which is typically does not cover the full amount of need in those areas. And so bringing the territories under the same banner as everyone else is in the United States here, and making sure they receive the same sort of access to the program that folks in the States do. And then, of course, lowering barriers for participation for SNAP for immigrants and immigrant communities. The rules around SNAP eligibility within those communities are really complex. They're incredibly restrictive, and there are only a limited categories of adult immigrants are eligible without a 5-year waiting period. And then lastly, on accountability, ensuring that this program is accountable. Certainly there are folks who will say making sure it's accountable to taxpayers, accountable to Congress. It needs to be accountable to the participants within the program itself. And there are many ways in which we can do that. Certainly one of the things we've seen a huge uptick of in the past few years, something we've been raising a lot with folks, is investing in anti-theft EBT cards. There's been a huge uptick, as I said, in folks who are getting their benefits stolen. It's an incredibly heartbreaking reality to think about folks who are going to the store, who are trying to buy food to feed their families, go to the checkout line. They think and they believe and they should have X amount in their accounts, and they end up having zero. We've heard just so many accounts of that across the states, and there's really some fairly straightforward fixes to improve the technology on those EBT cards. Just like so many of us have gotten that technology update on our credit cards, that needs to happen on those EBT cards as well. And then redesigning the performance metrics that all states have to work through to make sure those metrics are centering participants' experience in the program. And so those are some of just the kind of key policy ideas that we've been pushing for, and hope to have your all's help in doing so as well.
Yeah, and I'd love to jump into, and Alex and Monica are the experts on those programs, and so I'll keep it a little bit higher level and say that to achieve that good farm bill, we need a unified farm bill and a bipartisan farm bill. And thinking about the issue of achieving a unified farm bill, I mean one that marries nutrition programs and farm programs. And to dig into the history, at least somewhat recent history a little bit, the 2014 farm bill, so going back not for the one we're currently in, but the one before, and that was supposed to be the 2012 bill, but it was uniquely challenging to get done, and took 21 months and multiple Congresses to get that done. And a big part of that problem and challenge was around attacks on nutrition programs. And the House actually passed separate farm and nutrition components at one point, and that was the first time, as I understand it, since 1973 that a chamber passed a farm bill that split things up. And looking at 2018, the current farm bill that we're operating under, that was also formulated with a contentious debate centered around the issue of SNAP work requirements, which I know have been brought up here a number of times. So given questions too, the issues that you all have raised about the Thrifty Food Plan and challenges there, finding those pathways through where we can address these issues and keep the Farm Bill unified and make sure those nutrition programs are strong, I think that's essential to achieving a best or a better Farm Bill. Additionally, from NFU's perspective, a big issue for our members and for farmers across the country is, in order for them to be successful, for their farm businesses to be successful and for them to stay in business, they need fair and competitive markets. And over the last several decades, we've seen massive levels of corporate consolidation in the marketplace. So where farmers are selling into, so for example, in meat processing, there are only 4 companies that control 85% of the marketplace. That's a gargantuan level of concentration that puts farmers in a difficult position to get a good price. It also can create some of the brittleness we saw in the system around access to food during COVID, because those marketplaces were so consolidated, plants so massive. It's also true on the side where farmers are purchasing their inputs from, seeds and chemicals and other such things, where there's been a great deal of consolidation. So for us, for Farmers Union members, a good farm bill is one that looks at these issues, takes them seriously, and puts good bipartisan solutions into place to help address them. Many of those solutions, they're out there, we've endorsed them, and many of them are low or no cost. It's about better enforcing our antitrust laws or pro-competition laws. And it's about some tweaks in the marketplace to make sure farmers have protections. And ultimately, this should also mean lower prices for consumers, a fair marketplace for everybody. Another key piece to have a good farm bill for us is one where that safety net that I mentioned earlier is robust, one that deals with market fluctuations and helps farmers when there are disasters and make sure their risk management tools are good. They're probably a little bit too technical for for this conversation. But some of the core commodity support programs, they're called ARC and PLC. And currently you have to decide between the two. You have to sort of guess, which one do I want to help support me in the year ahead, without any way to know for sure which one is the best choice. And if you pick wrong, you don't have that support. So we believe there should just be dual enrollment, and you get the hires of one or the other. The whole point is you're creating a safety net that you shouldn't have to make folks guess at whether that support will be there or not, and make sort of a strange decision. So that's a key piece for us. And then more broadly, and that general issue that I just mentioned, Monica had it up on one of her slides earlier. One of the other ones she had on her slide was around conservation programs and putting farmers in the best possible position and giving them the most support that we can to make sure they can continue being good stewards of their land is essential. And that conservation funding needs to be there. It's a core component of the Farm Bill, and it's really important to farmers union members who are great stewards and want to continue doing that. But that does take financial and technical assistance to put a lot of those practices in place. So from a farmers union perspective, that's a lot of what makes a good Farm Bill. Of course, there are other pieces, but I'll stop there.
Thanks, Aaron. And you really demonstrated that the complexity of the Farm Bill, but also how this is really a comprehensive legislation. I know a lot of us really live in the nutrition title in this community, but it's really all connected. And at the end of the day, it's about how is it impacting the ability for people to be able to afford food. And I think what you guys are demonstrating is that level of complexity of what it takes for a person to actually be able to put food on the table. One last question, and the panel, you all kind of really touched on this key theme that at the end of the day, farm bills that have passed and have signed into law have always been done in a bipartisan way at the end of the day. There's been posturing at one level or another, but at the end of the day, it was going to take both sides to really come together to really support the passage of the Farm Bill and ensure that it actually becomes signed into law. Considering the political challenges we have right now, I know, Alex, you touched on that a little bit, the difficulties we're seeing in the House, some of the challenges you're seeing in the Senate side with some disagreements on how to address certain programs. What do you think it's going to take? I guess just to ask a better question. What can be achievable? I know sometimes we feel like, nothing can happen, but I tend to try to be a little bit more optimistic in seeing things, particularly as a former Hill staff. I know there's always a way to get through the fog. So what do y'all see as a way to actually get us through this fog? What can be accomplished ideally this year, but if not this year, what can be accomplished in a Farm Bill that you think will be actually beneficial enough to help us put in the right path to addressing food insecurity in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think before, and I'm happy to hand it over to the other esteemed folks in this panel about what is possible, but I also sort of want to highlight a distinction between what is possible, what is a good Farm Bill, and also the need to possibly go the path of no Farm Bill. And I'll explain that a little bit. So it's critically important, especially Democrats in this situation, not accept a Farm Bill that damages the SNAP program or does other harmful policies that would create more hunger, just because they feel that is the only Farm Bill that can get passed with bipartisan votes, or because they support some of the other provisions within the bill. They need to have the ability to walk away. With a longer term extension, a year, 2, 3 years, they can extend the Farm Bill, and most things would stay on the same path, and there wouldn't be dramatic shifts in policies or funding or what have you. If all Republicans are willing to put on the table is a bad bill, then no new Farm Bill is pretty much the best option. And Democrats should push for an extension of, I said, a year or two or longer. And so really just knowing that there's an option to walk away and to say, I'm going to accept no new Farm Bill, and no new Farm Bill just being a better option than accepting a bad Farm Bill has to be put on the table. This is something we've heard from Leader Jeffries. This is something we've heard from other key hunger advocates on the Hill and representatives who kind of lead the hunger charge on the Hill. And so just want to make sure that is as folks are hearing this and thinking about what is possible, also the understanding of knowing that in many ways, no new farm bill is better than accepting a farm bill that would do harm, that would increase hunger, and make it more difficult for producers and other folks along the line. But with that, I'll pass it off to Monica and Aaron to talk about what is possible.
Yeah, I completely agree with Alex. I mean, I think that, if a farm bill, a 2023 farm bill is resulting in, changes to gains that we made in 2018, or changes that would put a cap on the Thrifty Food Plan, or that would cut SNAP, I think that we recognize that that's not a good farm bill, right? And I think in terms of for Feeding America and what's most critical to us for our network, TFAP is also a part of the nutrition program. We often talk about SNAP, but TFAP is part of the nutrition program. So is CSFP. It helps address the hunger needs of many seniors. TFAP feeds everyone. We at the food bank, our network it doesn't only feed people who are on participating in the federal nutrition programs. It also feeds people who don't qualify, who are not eligible because of their income. They're just above the threshold. We get everyone who comes to our doors, and TFAP accounts for about 35% of the food that's distributed. So we want a farm bill that's going to strengthen all of the nutrition programs, especially TFAP, because we do feed so many people who are not on SNAP, who are not on WIC, who are not in any other food assistance program. We are their last alternative. They come to us to help fill the gap. And I think if anything, the recent food insecurity data demonstrates that we have more work to do to help address the food needs of millions of families. That, we can't walk away after the pandemic and say, okay, we've done a great job, so, on to the next thing, and we don't need these programs. No, if anything, it shows us when we absolutely all of a sudden look away, that we run the risk of more families spiraling into food insecurity, and we should not want that. The other piece I'll just kind of add is that, we also want a farm bill that's going to center the participant experience. We saw in our Elevating Voices report the challenges for many families. I think that Alex and Aaron and everyone talked about this, is that there's opportunity for us here to address their experience. The many administrative hurdles that are punitive, that really don't help to feed families. We know they don't help to feed families. I think the remnants in terms of the felon ban, how do we help people get another start in life? How do we help people to be successful if we're not even allowing them access to help meet their basic needs? So we need to make sure that we're looking at those opportunities. I would say food sovereignty for tribal communities has to be key as well. We saw during the pandemic how tribal communities really struggled. And I think that there's ways and opportunities for us to do more to help communities who don't have that equitable access to all the programs in ways that can meet their unique needs. I would also say, we need to address the need to have more access to halal and kosher foods in the federal nutrition programs. There are lots of communities that have a diet that aligns to their faith, and we should be able to make sure that we're making that available to people who want to be able to adhere to their faith-based diet. I think the other thing I would also add is lifting the 5-year ban on immigrants is another one where we see that we want to make sure that everyone who is here is here as citizens and going through the process, the citizenship process legally, has access to programs to make sure that they can thrive. So again, I think it's just critically important for us to make sure that we're strengthening and protecting all of the programs. And then just to acknowledge that, you know, the food banks cannot do this alone. Anytime we see cuts to a program, whether it's WIC, whether it's CSFP, whether it's GusNIP, whether it's SNAP, no matter what the program is, it only puts pressure on the food banks. And, you know, I think that we were seeing the demand, we've been seeing the demand all year long, with many of our food banks having to spend money out of their own budgets to buy more food to meet the need. I think we knew all along that we were seeing a trend that was very troubling. So I think we have to recognize that, you know, we stand up and support all of these programs because we know that our food banks cannot do this alone.
Yeah, and following on just a little bit, if that's okay, Eric, to the sort of what can be done question. There are so many really great points made there, and one thing I was hearing is there is a lot that needs to be done. There are improvements I think that all of us want to make on the farm program side, on the nutrition program side, that ideally we need to get done. And, you know, hearing what Alex had to share about that concern about a bad farm bill and not wanting to just pass a farm bill for farm bill's sake, definitely hear that. That's a concern. There's also a danger in, you know, that posture sort of going too far in the direction where we're not setting ourselves up for that opportunity to get those improvements that we all want and need through a farm bill too. So continuing to find that path forward and trying to not lose momentum, maintaining our advocacy and helping our lawmakers understand what we do want and why those programmatic changes are needed. In terms of what can be done in the short term, I mean, we are very, you know, the farm bill, the 2018 farm bill has expired. And so we really are looking at an extension scenario as we approach the end of this year, because especially there would be a lot of problems that would end up happening due to farm programs that would also really raise the price of food in the marketplace. So we're going to need an extension. But any kind of extension, regardless of its length, shouldn't prevent us and ought not prevent us from continuing to have these kinds of conversations, talking about the programmatic improvements that we need to see or the redirection of resources to where we need them. And we need to keep having that conversation on the Hill and amongst ourselves.
Thank you, everyone. And I'll turn over now to some questions that we have in the audience. And I'm going to summarize this particular question here. You know, we often talk about the Farm Bill and the programs is related to the Farm Bill, but there are other programs that's outside the Farm Bill that also address food security and nutrition. I think about WIC, for example, that helps specifically young children and mothers, you know, all the way up to the age of 5. But can y'all talk a little about how, I guess, these two things complement each other? Like, how does the Farm Bill complement our overall food nutrition and domestic nutrition programs?
I would say that the Farm Bill is kind of the backbone of our food system and kind of our largest nutrition programs, right? We know that SNAP is incredibly it's efficient, right? You know, people get an EBT card, they're able to make purchases, you know, with dignity and go to the grocery store or now be able to purchase online. So I think we've really made strides in terms of how people can be able to access food. The food bank network really relies on those TFAP you know, commodities and other commodities, you know, whether there are sometimes surpluses and USDA purchase them and give them to the food banks so that we're able to have access to them, whether they're specific kinds of proteins or produce or vegetables, and it helps farmers. So I would say that, the Farm Bill is really kind of the backbone of our food system. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that the child nutrition programs, whether it's school meals, whether it's WIC, whether it's after school programs, it's a continuum of food assistance, and they all complement each other. And so it's kind of like, it's a little bit like Jenga, right? You start pulling the blocks out from under, these nutrition programs, and eventually one can't support the other. We need all of the blocks in place to be able to support the structure. And so I think, we have to make sure that while we're investing in SNAP, we're investing in TFAP, we're investing in WIC. And even though WIC doesn't fall under the Farm Bill, we have to make sure we're helping everyone, including our seniors who experience high rates of hunger. So I think, when we look at it and we look at some of those innovations, especially around kind of being able to purchase food online, that helps many families who are working 2 jobs, who may not be able to carry loads of groceries on the bus, or spend money on an Uber, or spend money on a taxi to go get those groceries, that they're able to have them delivered to their house at their convenience. So I think there's lots of opportunities and lots of ways that, we can kind of think about the Farm Bill. But for me, I think about it as a backbone of our food system.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And I'm glad, Eric, you mentioned WIC. It sort of allows me to bring up a critical issue that we're facing that I'm sure many folks on this call will be interested in hearing about, or likely already heard. We are facing a huge shortfall right now in WIC funding. I'm happy to put our reports in the chat that have documented this, but right now in this country, due to increased participation, which is good in certain ways because more folks are participating in a critical program, but also difficult because more folks are in need. And the increased price of food has made possibly for the first time in over 25 years, the possibility that folks who need WIC, who go to the program and are seeking help, might be turned away, might be waitlisted, because again, there's just currently a funding shortfall that exists. Neither the proposed House or Senate funding bills that are currently being pushed through the budgetary process has enough money to cover the WIC program. So there needs to be an emergency kind of infusion of cash into the WIC program as part of either a full year budget or the next round of kind of temporary funding or continuing resolution funding. And so the WIC program is in kind of dire straits at the moment and needs an infusion of cash to help stabilize that. And that's something that's really important that we're going to be lifting up, and certainly others will be lifting up as well. And it also allows me to sort of touch on the other major part of the agricultural spending on the Hill, which is the agricultural appropriations bills. Just within the past day or so, the Senate is taking up their agricultural appropriations bill, which is fairly decent funding. It's not, I think, funding we'd all love to see, but it's sort of probably the high watermark we're going to get right now. But over on the House side of things, they're proposing bills with upwards of 14% cuts across the board to all ag programs, full of terrible policy riders that would damage the SNAP program, that would damage the litany of anti-hunger programs in the federal government. And so while the Farm Bill is certainly important, making sure to keep a close eye on the funding issue with WIC, and of course the appropriations package in the ag space, especially what's going on in the House, your voices in district, your voices in the states are going to be critical in making sure that your representatives and your congressional delegation know that there's a WIC funding crisis, and that postpartum women and pregnant folks and young children could be turned away again for the first time in decades. There's always been a mandate that whoever needs it can come to this program, and there's always been enough money there. And then on the appropriations side, making sure that our critical programs aren't taking a huge cut, which will result in just massively increased hunger across the board. And so I'll put some things in the chat for folks to see, but just wanted to raise those as well.
Thank you. And I have maybe spend time to answer one more question in the Q&A. In an ideal world, what sort of incentive or disincentive would you like to see in the Farm Bill that can address both the farmers' needs and nutrition security simultaneously? That may have been stuff you guys have kind of already answered already, but.
Well, I can jump in with one, maybe just because we haven't given this program a whole lot of love yet, that I feel like, I mean, all of them are at the intersection of both, but one unique program is GusNIP, and don't make me try and say that whole thing out loud, Gus Schumacher, et cetera, but, that nutrition incentive program that, that provides folks with additional dollars to spend on fresh produce. That means farmers can sell more of their produce, and it means folks who might not otherwise be able to access it or as easily are able to bring more of that healthy food home. That's a unique model, that double up bucks model. And while it may not be the backbone, say like SNAP and some of these other programs, it's an innovative additional scaffolding that is so important. So just wanted to give GusNIP a little bit of love, and we strongly support that program.
Anybody else?
So, Eric, if you're asking about the incentives, like what are the incentives? I think that there's bipartisan support for many of the issues that we've talked about, right? I think there are some that are a little thornier than others, but I will say that there is bipartisan support for a lot of our programs because there are food banks in most congressional districts across the country. And because many of us and people on this call are operating programs that serve the constituents of people all across the country, right? So, hunger doesn't have a zip code. There is no congressional district for hunger. It exists in every district. And if you look at the food insecurity data, what it really showed was that everybody went unscathed. I mean, it wasn't that there was a higher rate of food insecurity among African Americans and Latinos. It showed that everybody is struggling to put food on the table. And so I think that, what that tells us is that, we have to continue to approach policies and advance policies that are bipartisan, that really address the needs of people who need food assistance, that we really strengthen all of the nutrition programs, TFAP, GusNIP, CSFP, SNAP, that we are looking at it from a very big picture, and that we avoid the narrative of trying to pit nutrition against the other titles in the program. That we recognize that we all need to come to this table and work together as stakeholders, that it's not this or that, but that it's all of the above. And it's up to Congress to determine where the money comes from, what's the priorities, but the biggest priority should be, how do we have a stable food system that helps meet the nutritional needs of our communities and our people so that they can thrive? And I think that's where our focus really needs to be. The other piece I'll just add is that, we, all of us here are working together. Feeding America has created a table. It's farmers. It's a farmer and kind of an ag coalition, Farmers Feeding America coalition. So we're really kind of working together with other stakeholders outside of the anti-hunger community, because we know that we need the Sweet Potato Council. We know that we need retailers. We need people in FMI to work with us to help meet the nutritional needs of people who are struggling with hunger. So when I think about what is the incentive should be that we should not want to have people who are experiencing hunger in any congressional district. That should be the incentive.
Well, on that note, I'm going to turn it to you guys to give us like one final thoughts from each of you. Like, what do you want the group to walk away with from this conversation? Well, Alex, I can start with you.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump in too soon. Well, first of all, again, Eric, thank you for having me. What a great conference, what a great conversation, what a great organization you lead, and thank you for all the leadership and everything you do for this community. I think the message and the focus of the center has always been, or has been in this particular cycle of the Farm Bill, on protecting and strengthening the SNAP program. Monica mentioned it, we've mentioned it so many times, how effective, how impactful it is. It is a backbone for supporting farmers and the folks that Aaron works with. The cycle and the impact of the SNAP program is so well seen. It was an incredible ability, as Monica mentioned. The federal government was able to prevent a massive spike in hunger. It was purposeful. They did it. It was achieved. We saw in the data fleshed out. We did not see massive spikes in hunger in 2020 and 2021, when obviously there was huge economic turmoil and lots of folks lost jobs and lost incomes. So it is doable. It is possible. It is achievable, and we have shown that we can do it with the right investment, with the right targeted capacity. The federal government can prevent hunger. It can drive down hunger. It can make families and folks whole again, and really help. And yet, as Monica mentioned, in 2022, as those supports and as those investments went away, we saw hunger start to creep back up again. And I think it's just imperative upon all of us to do whatever we can to show that we know the answers here, and just to create the political environment to produce those answers, to make sure those answers are not a temporary fix in a time of turmoil, but that there's a constant need continuing addressing hunger in this country. And so take the fact that we can do it, that we have done it, take that with you, let that be the wind at your back as you talk to your members and you talk to their staff, and say that we don't want to see a backsliding of hunger, and we don't want to see hunger increasing in this country. We know it's there, we know how to do it, so let's go do it.
Thanks, Alex. Aaron?
Well, I could go either way. Yeah, sure. I really appreciated what Monica said earlier about how it takes so many different stakeholders and actors working together to get this done. And I think, that's maybe the message I would want to leave the group with. It is something Monica's already really said, that in order to pass a good farm bill and one that addresses all of the needs we've discussed today, it will take all of us working together. And it's part of why at National Farmers Union, we so appreciate the relationship with the Alliance to End Hunger, the many members of the Alliance, and everyone on this call today. So thanks very much again for the opportunity. And Monica, how about you?
Closer.
I think I would like everyone to walk away with a to-do, and their to-do is to schedule a meeting with their representative in the district office or the district director to talk about how important a farm bill, a good, strong farm bill that strengthens programs, that protects them, that they make sure that they're hearing from you, that you consider the opportunity to even have a small little roundtable of other stakeholders, meeting with your member of Congress to tell them how important it is, and how important it is to fund these programs both through appropriations and through the Farm Bill. So I would like everyone to walk away with a to-do and wondering, what are they going to do to help ensure that we have a good, strong Farm Bill that will meet the needs of families and farmers through the next time we have to come into an authorization period. So that's what I'd like them to walk away with.
Well, thank you. You guys have your marching orders. I think at the end of the day, what we do know is that ending hunger is solvable. It's achievable. This is a problem that is solvable. It takes the public and political will to do so. And we've seen in the past that we've been able to actually have those strides. And so with your voice, your coalitions back at home, I think together we all can make this actually happen. And so I want to thank my panel here, Monica Gonzalez, Aaron Shire, Alex Berger, for sharing their time and expertise and really educating us about the importance of the Farm Bill, but most importantly, what it will take for us to really help build policies that's going to put us on path to ending hunger here in the United States. So thank you guys again for joining us. Sam, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you to all of our speakers. We have 4 sessions coming up in just a moment for everyone to join. You may need to use the right arrow button to be able to scroll through all 4 sessions and choose which one you'd like to jump into. A reminder, if you do not attend us in a session, it will be recorded and shared here on Excel events after the conference. In just a moment, a window is about to pop up that will prompt you for your next session. Just click that join button to enter. Thank you all to all of our speakers and have a great rest of your day.